Hi everyone. Welcome back to Goodnight Stories. My name is Lyra, and I will be your guide into whatever book we decide to read tonight. From young readers to young adult novels, my hope is to give you a comfortable space to listen to a story while you work or doze. So, sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea. Tonight we jump back into Erin Hunter's Forest of Secrets, the third book of the Warrior series. Chapter 3. Well, Tiger Claw challenged. We thought we'd hunt. Fireheart raised his head to hold the deputy's amber gaze. The clan needs fresh kill. But we couldn't find anything, Graystripe added, coming to stand beside Fireheart. Was the prey all curled up in their nests, eh? Tiger Claw hissed. He padded forward until he stood nose to nose with Fireheart, sniffed him, and then did the same to Graystripe. So how is it the pair of you smell of mouse? Fireheart exchanged a glance with Graystripe. It seemed a long time since they had hunted in the two-leg barn, and he had forgotten that they still might carry the scent of the mice they ate. Graystripe looked back at him helplessly, anxiety making his eyes wide. Bluestar should hear about this. The deputy growled. Follow me. Fireheart and Graystripe had no choice but to obey. Tiger Claw led them across the clearing to Bluestar's den at the foot of High Rock. Beyond the curtain of lichen that covered the entrance, Fireheart could see the clan leader curled up, apparently asleep, but as Tiger Claw shouldered his way into the den, she raised her head at once and sat up. What is it, Tiger Claw? She meowed, sounding puzzled. These two brave warriors have been out hunting. Tiger Claw's voice was thick with contempt. They're full fed, but they haven't brought home a single piece of fresh kill for the clan. Is this true? Bluestar turned her ice blue eyes on the young warriors. We weren't on a hunting patrol, Graystripe mumbled. That was true, though Fireheart, strictly speaking, they hadn't broken the warrior code by not bringing back any prey, but he knew it was no real excuse. We ate the first prey we caught to keep our strength up, Graystripe meowed, and then we couldn't find anything else. We meant to bring back fresh kill, but our luck was out. Tiger Claw gave a snort of disgust, as if he didn't believe a word they said. Even so, Bluestar meowed, with prey so scarce every cat should think of the clan before himself, and share what they have. I'm disappointed in both of you. Fireheart couldn't help feeling ashamed. Bluestar had brought him into the clan when he was a kitty pet, and he wanted to show her that he deserved her trust. If he had been alone with Bluestar, he might have tried to explain his real reason for being so late back to camp, but with Tiger Claw glaring at him, it was impossible. Besides, Fireheart wasn't ready to tell Bluestar about Ravenpaw's latest version of the Sunning Rocks battle. He wanted to speak to the cats from River Clan first, to confirm how Oakheart had really died. I'm sorry, Bluestar, he murmured. Sorry Phil's no bellies, Bluestar warned him. You must understand the needs of the clan come first, especially in Leaf Bear. Until next sunrise, you'll hunt for the clan, not for yourselves. When the rest of the clan has eaten, then you can take food for yourself. Her gaze softened. You both look exhausted, she observed. Go and sleep now, and I shall expect to see you out hunting before sun-high. Yes, Bluestar. Fireheart dipped his head and backed out of the den. Graystripe followed him, his fur fluffed up in a mixture of fear and embarrassment. I thought she'd have her tails off for sure, he meowed as the two cats turned toward the warrior's den. Then you should think yourselves lucky, the low growl came from behind them. Fireheart glanced over his shoulder to see that Tiger Claw was padding after them. If I were clan leader, I'd have punished you properly. Fireheart felt his fur prickle with anger. His lips drew back in the beginning of a snarl. Then he heard a warning hiss from Graystripe and bit back what he wanted to say, turning away from Tiger Claw. That's right, kitty pet, Tigerclaw jeered. Slink back to your nest. Blue Star may trust you, but I don't. I saw you at the Wind Clan battle. Don't forget. He, he bounded past the two younger cats and pushed his way into the warrior's den ahead of them. Graystripe let out a long, shivering breath. Fireheart, he meowed solemnly. You're either the bravest cat in all the clans or a raving mad. For StarClan's sake, don't wind up Tigerclaw any more. I didn't ask for him to hate me, Fireheart pointed out angrily. He slid through the branches to see Tigerclaw settling himself into his place near the center. The dark tabby ignored Fireheart, turning himself around 2 or 3 times before curling up to sleep. Fireheart made his own sleeping place. Nearby Sandstorm and Dustpelt were stretched out together. Sandstorm sat up as Fireheart approached. Tigerclaw's been watching for you ever since we got back from the gathering, she whispered. I gave him your message, but I don't think he believed me. What did you do to tweak his tail? Fireheart felt comforted by the sympathetic look in her eyes, but he couldn't stop his jaws from gaping in a massive yawn. I'm sorry, Sandstorm, he mumbled. I've got to get some sleep. I'll talk to you later. He half expected Sandstorm to be offended, but instead she got up and patted over to him. As he settled into the soft moss that lined the floor of the den, she crouched down beside him and pressed her side against his. Dustpelt opened one eye and glared at Fireheart. He let out a snort and pointedly turned his back. But Fireheart was too tired to worry about Dustpelt's jealousy. He was already drifting into sleep. As his eyes closed, his last sensation was of Sandstorm's fur warm against his flank. Fireheart paced along the hunting trail. His body felt full of energy, and he opened his jaws to taste the scent of prey. He knew he was dreaming, but he felt his belly growl in anticipation of fresh kill. Bracken arched over his head. A bright and pearly light poured down on him, as if the moon was full in a cloudless sky. Every fern frond, every blade of grass glowed, and the pale shapes of primroses clustering thickly beside the path seemed to shine with a light of their own. All around him, Fireheart could feel the damp warmth of New Leaf. The icy snow-covered camp seemed 9 lives away. As the path began to lead upward, another cat stepped out in front of him. Fireheart halted, his heart thudding as he recognized Spotted Leaf. The tortoiseshell cat padded forward until she could touch her soft pink nose to his. Fireheart rubbed his face against hers, a purr rising from deep inside him. When Fireheart first came to the forest, Spotted Leaf had been the ThunderClan medicine cat. She had been killed in cold blood by an invading ShadowClan warrior. Fireheart missed her still, but her spirit had returned to him in dreams more than once. Spotted Leaf took a pace back. Come, Fireheart, she mewed. I want to show you something. She turned and padded softly away, glancing around from time to time to make sure he was following. Fireheart bounded after her, admiring the dapple of moonlight on her fur. Soon they came to the top of a hill. Spotted Leaf led him out of the bracken tunnel and onto a high grassy ridge. Look, she meowed, raising her muzzle to point. Fireheart blinked. Instead of the familiar span of trees and fields ahead of him, a shining expanse of water stretched as far as he could see. The reflected light dazzled him, and he closed his eyes. Where had all this water come from? He couldn't even tell if this was clan territory. The silver sheen flattened everything and hid the usual landmarks. Spotted Leaf's sweet scent filled the air around him. Her voice sounded close to his ear. Remember, Fireheart, she murmured. Water can quench fire. Startled, Fireheart opened his eyes again. A chill breeze fluttered the surface of the water, penetrating his fur. Spotted Leaf was gone. As Fireheart turned in every direction, searching for her, the light began to fade. The warmth went with it, and the feeling of grass under his paws. In less than a heartbeat, he was plunged into cold and darkness. Fireheart! Fireheart! A cat was nudging him. Fireheart tried to duck away and heard his name called again. It was Graystripe's voice. Fireheart forced his eyes open to see the big gray cat crouched anxiously over him. Fireheart, he repeated. Wake up, it's nearly sun-high. Grunting with the effort, Fireheart hauled himself out of his nest and sat up. Pale, cold light was filtering through the branches of the den. Willowpelt and Darkstripe, still asleep, closer to the center of the bush, but Sandstorm and Dustpelt had left already. You were muttering in your sleep, Graystripe told him. Are you okay? What? Fireheart had not yet shaken off the dream. It was always bitter waking to realize that Spotted Leaf was dead, and he would never speak to her again except in his dreams. It's nearly sun-high, repeated Graystripe. We should be out hunting. I know, Fireheart mewed, fighting to wake up properly. Hurry up, then. His friend gave him a final nudge before heading out of the den. Meet you at the gorse tunnel. Fireheart licked one paw and rubbed it over his face. As his head cleared, he suddenly remembered Spotted Leaf's warning. Water can quench fire. What was she trying to tell him? Fireheart thought back to Spotted Leaf's earlier prophecy that fire would save the clan. As he followed Graystripe out of the den, Fireheart found himself shivering, and not from cold. He could feel trouble gathering like rain-heavy storm clouds. If the water that was coming quenched fire, then what would save the clan? Did Spotted Leaf's words mean that ThunderClan was doomed? Chapter 4. Fireheart bounded up the ravine, the snow crisp under his paws. The sun shone in a pale blue sky, and though there was little warmth in its rays, the sight of it cheered Fireheart and made him hopeful that New Leaf was not far away. Just behind him, Graystripe echoed Fireheart's thoughts. With any luck, the sun will bring out some prey. Not if they hear you stomping along, Sandstorm teased as she scrambled past him. Brackenpaw, Graystripe's apprentice, protested loyally. He doesn't stomp. But Graystripe only responded with a good-natured growl. Fireheart felt new energy flow into his limbs. Even though their duties today were meant as punishment, no cat had told them they had to hunt alone, and it would be good to have friends. Fireheart winced at the memory of Bluestar's ice-cold gaze when she had rebuked him and Graystripe for apparently hunting for themselves. He would make up for lying to her by bringing back as much fresh kill as he could. The clan needed it badly. By the time he and Graystripe left the den that morning, the store of prey in the camp had almost gone, and most of the cats had already left to hunt. Fireheart had spotted Tigerclaw on his way back down the ravine with the morning patrol. A squirrel was clamped in his jaws, its long tail brushing the snow. The deputy's eyes narrowed menacingly as he passed Fireheart, but he did not put his prey down to speak. At the top of the slope, Sandstorm ran on ahead, while Graystripe began showing Brackenpaw where to search for mice among the tree roots. Watching them, Fireheart couldn't suppress a pang of loss as he thought of Cinderpaw, who had been his own apprentice. She would be with them now if it hadn't been for her accident. Instead, her crippled leg, the result of an accident on the Thunderpath, kept her in the den with Yellowfang, the ThunderClan medicine cat. Pushing away these heavy thoughts, he crept forward, his jaws parted as he examined the forest smells. A faint breeze stirred the surface of the snow and brought a familiar scent. Rabbit. Lifting his head, Fireheart could see the brown-furred creature snuffling under a clump of bracken, where a few green spikes of grass poked through the snow. He dropped into a hunting crouch and delicately, paw-step by paw-step, drew closer. At the last moment, the rabbit sensed him and sprang up, but it was too late. Before it could even squeal, Fireheart pounced. Triumphantly, Fireheart headed back to the camp, dragging the rabbit along with him. As soon as he entered the clearing, he saw with relief that the pile of fresh kill was swelling again after the morning patrols. Bluestar was standing beside it. Well done, Fireheart, she meowed, as he brought the rabbit to the pile. Will you take that straight to Yellowfang in her den? Warmed by his leader's approval, Fireheart hauled the rabbit across the clearing. A tunnel of ferns, brown and brittle now, led to the secluded corner of the camp where the ThunderClan medicine cat had her den inside a split rock. Ducking under the ferns, Fireheart saw Yellowfang lying in the mouth of her den, with her paws tucked under her chest. Cinderpaw sat in front of her, her smoky gray fur fluffed up, and her blue eyes focused on the medicine cat's broad face. Now, Cinderpaw, came the old cat's rasping mew. One Eye's paw pads are cracked because of the cold. What are you going to do for her? Marigold leaves in case of infection, Cinderpaws replied promptly. Ointment of yarrow to soften the pads and help them heal. Poppy seeds if she's in pain. Well done, purred Yellowfang. Cinderpaw sat up even straighter, and her eyes shone with pride. As Fireheart knew only too well, the medicine cat didn't give praise lightly. Right, you can take her the leaves and the ointment, meowed Yellowfang. She won't need the poppy seeds unless the cuts get worse. Cinderpaw stood up and was on her way into the den when she caught sight of Fireheart standing by the tunnel. Mewing in delight, she hurried over to him with an awkward, lurching gait. Regret stabbed at Fireheart, sharp as a claw. Cinderpaw had been a ceaseless bundle of energy before the Thunderpath accident that crushed her leg. Now she would never run properly again, and had to give up her dreams of becoming a ThunderClan warrior. But the Thunderpath monster had not crushed her bright spirit. Her eyes were dancing as she reached Fireheart. Fresh kill, she exclaimed. Is that for us? Great! About time, too, grumbled Yellowfang, still sitting inside her den. Mind you, the rabbit's very welcome, she added. We've had half the clan in here since sunrise, complaining about some ache or other. Fireheart carried the rabbit across the clearing and dropped it in front of the medicine cat. Yellowfang poked it with one paw. It might have a bit of flesh on its bones for once, she remarked grudgingly. All right, Cinderpaw, take the marigold leaves and the yarrow to One Eye, and hurry back. If you're quick, there might be some rabbit left. Cinderpaw purred and brushed Yellowfang's shoulder with the tip of her tail as she went past her into the den. Softly, Fireheart mewed. How's she doing? Is she settling down? She's fine, snapped Yellowfang. Stop worrying about her. Fireheart wished he could. Cinderpaw had been his apprentice. He could not help feeling that he had been partly responsible for her accident. He should have stopped her from going to the Thunderpath alone. Then he brought himself up short, remembering exactly how the accident had happened. Tiger Claw had asked Blue Star to meet him by the Thunderpath, but Blue Star had been too ill to go. Few warriors were in the camp. Fireheart himself had been about to leave on an urgent mission for catnip to treat Blue Star's green cough. He had told Cinderpaw not to go meet Tiger Claw instead of him, but Cinderpaw had ignored his order. The accident had happened because Tiger Claw had placed his scent marker too close to the edge of the Thunderpath. Fireheart suspected that it was meant as a trap for Blue Star, and Tiger Claw was responsible. As Fireheart said goodbye to Yellowfang and went back to hunting, he felt a new surge of determination to bring Tiger Claw's guilt into the open. For the sake of Redtail, murdered, for Ravenpaw, driven from the clan, for Cinderpaw, crippled, and for all the clan cats, both now and to come, who were in danger from Tiger Claw's greed for power. It was the day after their hunting punishment. Fireheart decided there was no time to lose before visiting RiverClan territory, to discover how Oakheart had really died. He crouched at the edge of the forest and looked out toward the frozen river. The wind made a rustling sound in the dry reeds that poked up through the ice and snow. Beside him, Graystripe sniffed the breeze, alert for the scent of other cats. I can smell RiverClan cats, he whispered. But the scent's old. I think we can cross safely. Fireheart realized he was more worried about cats from his own clan seeing them than meeting an enemy patrol. Already, Tiger Claw suspected him of treachery. If the deputy found out what they were doing now, they'd be crow food. All right, he whispered. Let's go. Graystripe led the way confidently across the ice, keeping his weight low over his paws so he didn't slip. At first, Fireheart was impressed. Then he realized that Graystripe had been crossing the river secretly for moons now to go and meet Silverstream. He followed more cautiously, half expecting the ice to crack under his weight and plunge him into the freezing dark water below. Here, downstream of Sunning Rocks, the river itself was the boundary between the two clans. Fireheart's fur prickled as he crossed, and he kept glancing back to make sure that no cat from his clan was watching. Once they reached the far bank, they crept into the shelter of a reed bed and sniffed the air again for signs of RiverClan cats. Fireheart was conscious of Graystripe's unspoken fear. Every muscle of the Grey Warrior's body was tense as he peered through the reed stems. We must both be mad, he hissed to Fireheart. You made me promise to meet Silverstream at Four Trees whenever I wanted to see her, and now here we are in RiverClan territory again. I know, Fireheart answered, but there's no other way. We need to talk to our River Clan cat, and Silverstream's more likely to help us than any of the others. He was just as apprehensive as his friend. They were surrounded by scents of River Clan, though none of them were fresh. To Fireheart it felt as if he were a kitty pet in the forest for the first time again, lost in a frightening and unfamiliar place. Using the reeds for cover, the two cats began to work their way upstream. Fireheart tried to step lightly, as if he were stalking prey, his belly skimming the snow. He was uncomfortably aware of how his flame-colored coat stood out against the white surface. The scent of River Clan cats was growing more powerful, and he guessed the camp must be nearby. How much farther? He mewed softly to Graystripe. Not far. See that island up ahead? They had come to a place where the river curved away from the ThunderClan territory and grew wider. Not far ahead, a small island surrounded by reed beds showed above the frozen surface. Willow trees stooped low from the banks of the island, the tips of their overhanging branches trapped in the ice. An island, Fireheart echoed in amazement. What happens when the river isn't frozen? Do they swim across? Silverstream says the water's very shallow there, Graystripe explained, but I've never been right into the camp myself. Beside them, the ground sloped gently upward, away from the reedy shore. At the top, gorse and hawthorn grew thickly, with the occasional holly showing green and shining under its coating of snow. But there was a bare expanse of shore between the reeds and the sheltering bushes, with no cover for prey or cats. Graystripe had been moving forward in a low crouch. Now he lifted his head, scenting the air and looking warily around. Then, without warning, he sprang away from the reeds and dashed up the slope. Fireheart raced after him, his paws skidding in the snow. Fireheart raced after him, his paws skidding in the snow. Reaching the bushes, they plunged between the branches and stopped, gasping for breath. Fireheart listened for the yowling of an alert patrol, but no sound came up from the camp. He flopped down on the dead leaves and puffed out a sigh of relief. We can see the entrance of the camp from here, Graystripe told him. I used to wait here for Silverstream. Fireheart hoped she would come soon. Every moment they spent here increased their chances of discovery. Shifting his position so he had a good view of the slope and the island camp, he could just make out the silhouettes of cats moving around. He was so intent on trying to peer into the thick bushes that screened the island that he didn't see the tabby, who was padding past their hiding place until she was barely a tail length away. She carried a small squirrel in her jaws, and her gaze was fixed on the frozen ground. Fireheart froze into a crouch, ready to spring out if the cat spotted them and tracked her with his gaze as she passed. Luckily, he thought, the scent of the prey she was carrying must have masked the scent of ThunderClan intruders. Suddenly, he realized that a group of 4 cats, led by Leopard Fur, the River Clan deputy, had emerged from the camp. Leopard Fur was fiercely hostile toward ThunderClan ever since her patrol had come upon Fireheart and Graystripe trespassing on River Clan territory as they returned from bringing Wind Clan home. A River Clan cat had died in the ensuing fight, and Leopard Fur did not forgive easily. If she discovered Fireheart and Graystripe now, she wouldn't even give them a chance to explain what they were doing on this side of the river. To Fireheart's relief, the patrol didn't come their way. Instead, they set off across the frozen river toward the Sunning Rocks, off to patrol the border, Fireheart guessed. At last, a familiar silver-gray shape appeared. Silverstream, purred Graystripe. Fireheart watched the River Clan she-cat stepping delicately across the ice toward the bank. She was certainly beautiful, he realized, with a finely shaped head and thick, sleek fur. No wonder Graystripe was captivated by her. Graystripe rose to his paws, ready to call out to her, when 2 other cats emerged from the camp and ran to catch up with Silverstream. One of them was the smoky black warrior, Blackclaw, recognizable from gatherings by his long legs and lean body, and a smaller cat Fireheart guessed must have been Blackclaw's apprentice. Hunting patrol, Graystripe murmured. All 3 cats began to climb the slope. Fireheart let out a hiss, half impatient, half fear. He had hoped they would be able to speak to Silverstream alone. How could they separate her from her companions? What if Blackclaw scented the intruders? After all, he wasn't carrying a helpful mouthful of prey to block his scent glands. Blackclaw took the lead with his apprentice, and Silverstream followed a tail length or two behind. As the patrol reached the bushes, Silverstream paused, her ears pricked warily as if she had detected a familiar but unexpected scent. Graystripe let out a short, sharp hiss, and Silverstream's ears swiveled toward the sound. "Silverstream!" Graystripe mewed softly. The she-cat flicked her ears, and Fireheart let out a breath he had been holding. She had heard. "Blackclaw," she called to the warrior ahead of her. "I'll try for a mouse in the bushes here. Don't wait for me." Fireheart heard an answering mew from Blackclaw. Moments later, Silverstream slipped through the branches until she reached the space where the young ThunderClan warriors were crouching. She pressed herself against Graystripe, purring loudly, and the two cats rubbed their faces together with obvious delight. "I thought you only wanted us to meet at 4 trees," Silverstream meowed, when the two cats had finished greeting each other. "What are you doing here?" "I brought Fireheart to see you," Graystripe explained. "He needs to ask you something." Fireheart had not spoken to Silverstream since he had let her escape in the battle. He guessed she was remembering that too, for she dipped her head graciously toward him, with no trace of defensive hostility she had shown when he had tried to discourage her from seeing Graystripe at the start of their relationship. "Yes, Fireheart?" "What do you know about the battle at Sunning Rocks, where Oakheart died?" Fireheart launched straight in. "Were you there?" "No," Silverstream replied. She looked thoughtful. "Is it very important?" "Yes, it is. Could you ask some cat who was? I'll do better than that." Silverstream interrupted him. "I'll bring Mistyfoot to talk to you herself." Fireheart exchanged a glance with Graystripe. "Was that a good idea?" "It's okay," meowed Silverstream, as if she guessed what was worrying him. "Mistyfoot knows about me and Graystripe. She doesn't like it, but she won't give me away. She'll come now if I ask her." Fireheart hesitated, then dipped his head in assent. "All right, thanks." He had hardly finished speaking before Silverstream turned and slid out of the bushes again. Fireheart watched her bounding through the snow toward the camp. Isn't she great?" Graystripe murmured. Fireheart said nothing, but settled down to wait. He was getting more nervous with every moment that passed. If he and Graystripe stayed in RiverClan territory for much longer, some of the RiverClan cats were bound to find them. They would be lucky to escape with their fur intact. "Graystripe," he began, "if Silverstream can't—" Just then he saw the silver-gray tabby crossing the ice from the camp again, with another cat behind her. They raced up the slope, and Silverstream led the way into the bushes. The cat she brought with her was a slender queen with thick gray fur and blue eyes. For a heartbeat, Fireheart thought she seemed familiar. He decided he must have seen her at the gathering. When the queen saw Fireheart and Graystripe, she stopped dead. Her fur began to rise suspiciously, and she flattened her ears against her head. "Mistyfoot," meowed Silverstream quietly. "These are ThunderClan cats," hissed Mistyfoot. "What are they doing here? This is RiverClan territory. Mistyfoot, listen." Silverstream went over to her friend and tried to nudge her toward Fireheart and Graystripe. Mistyfoot stood her ground. Fireheart couldn't help feeling daunted by the look of blank hostility in her eyes. Had he been stupid to think that RiverClan would help him? "I kept your secret about him," Mistyfoot reminded Silverstream, jerking her chin at Graystripe. "But I'm not going to keep quiet if you start bringing the whole ThunderClan here." "Don't be ridiculous," Silverstream retorted. "It's all right, Mistyfoot," Fireheart put in quickly. "We haven't taken any of your prey, and we're not here to spy. We need to speak to a cat who fought in the battle at Sunning Rocks, where Oakheart died." "Why?" Mistyfoot narrowed her eyes. "It's hard to explain," Fireheart mewed. "But it's nothing that could harm RiverClan. I swear that by StarClan," he added. The young queen seemed to relax, and this time she let Silverstream urge her forward until she was sitting beside Fireheart. Graystripe stood up, ducking his head to avoid the low-hanging branches. "If you two are going to talk, Silverstream and I will leave you to it." Fireheart opened his mouth to protest, alarmed at the idea of being left alone in enemy territory, but Graystripe and Silverstream were already slipping out of the bushes. Just before they vanished amongst the tough hawthorn branches, Graystripe looked back. "Oh, Fireheart." He meowed quietly. Before you go back, make sure you roll in something strong. To hide the River Clan scent, he blinked in embarrassment. Fox dung is good. Wait, Greystripe! Fireheart jumped to his paws, but it was no use. Greystripe and Silverstream were gone. Don't worry, meowed Mistyfoot behind him. I won't eat you. You'd give me a bellyache. Fireheart turned back to see her blue eyes sparkling with amusement. You're Fireheart, aren't you? She went on. I've seen you at gatherings. They say you used to be a kitty pet. Her voice was cool, with thinly veiled suspicion. That's true, Fireheart admitted heavily, feeling the familiar sting at the contempt of clan-born cats for his past. But I'm a warrior now. Mistyfoot licked her paw and drew it slowly over one ear, keeping her eyes fixed on his face. All right, she meowed at last. I fought in the battle. What do you want to know? Fireheart paused for a moment, putting his thoughts in order. He would have only one chance to find out the truth. He mustn't make any mistakes. Get on with it, growled Mistyfoot. I've left my kits to come talk to you. It won't take long, Fireheart promised. What can you tell me about the way Oakheart died? Oakheart? Mistyfoot looked down at her paws. After a deep breath, she lifted her eyes to Fireheart again. Oakheart was my father. Did you know that? No, I didn't, mewed Fireheart. I'm sorry, I never met him, but they say he was a brave warrior. He was the best and the bravest, Mistyfoot agreed. And he should never have died. It was an accident. Fireheart felt his heart begin to race. This was exactly what he needed to know. Are you sure, he asked. No cat killed him? He was wounded in the battle, but not enough to kill him, meowed Mistyfoot. Afterward, we found his body under some fallen rocks. Our medicine cat said that was what had killed him. So no cat was responsible. Fireheart muttered. Ravenpaw was right. What? The blue-gray queen frowned. Nothing, Fireheart meowed hastily. Nothing important. Thank you, Mistyfoot. That's just what I wanted to know. And if that's all... No, Mistyfoot, wait. There's one more thing. In the battle, one of our cats heard Oakheart say that no ThunderClan cat should harm Stonefur. Do you know what he meant by that? The RiverClan queen was silent for a while. Her blue eyes gazing into the distance. Then she shook her head firmly, as if she were flicking water off of it. Stonefur is my brother, she mewed. Then Oakheart was his father too? Fireheart realized. Is that why he wanted to protect him from ThunderClan cats? No, Mistyfoot's eyes flashed blue fire. Oakheart never tried to protect either of us. He wanted us to be warriors like him and bring honor to the clan. Then why? I don't know. She sounded as if she was genuinely puzzled. Fireheart tried not to feel disappointed. At least he knew for certain now that how Oakheart had died. But he couldn't shake off the feeling that what Oakheart had said about Stonefur was important. If only he could understand it. My mother might know, Mistyfoot meowed unexpectedly. Fireheart turned back to her, ears pricked. Greypool, she added. If she can't explain it, no cat can. Could you ask her? Maybe. Mistyfoot's expression was still guarded, but Fireheart guessed that she was as curious about the meaning of Oakheart's words as he himself was. But it might be better for you to speak to her yourself. Fireheart blinked in surprise that Mistyfoot should suggest such a thing when she had seemed so hostile at first. Can I? He asked. Now? No, Mistyfoot decided after a pause. It's too risky for you to stay here any longer. Leopard Fur's patrol will be back soon. Besides, Greypool is an elder now and hardly ever leaves the camp. She'll take some persuading before she'll come out, but don't worry, I'll think of a reason. Fireheart bowed his head in reluctant agreement. Part of him was wildly impatient to hear what Greypool had to say, but the rest of him knew that Mistyfoot was right. How will I know where to meet her? I'll send a message with Silverstream, Mistyfoot promised. Now go. If Leopard Fur finds you here, I won't be able to help you. Fireheart blinked at her. He would have liked to give the young queen a lick of gratitude, but he was afraid of getting clawed in return. Mistyfoot seemed to have gotten over the worst of her hostility, but she wasn't going to let him forget that they came from 2 different clans. Thank you, Mistyfoot, he meowed. I won't forget this. And if ever I can do anything for you. Just go, Missyfoot hissed, as Fireheart slipped past her toward the gap in the bushes. She added with a purr of amusement, "And don't forget the fox dung." Chapter 5. "I can't believe I'm doing this," Fireheart muttered as he pushed through the gorse tunnel into his own camp. He had found some fresh fox dung in the forest and rolled in it until he reeked. No cat would ever guess he had been in River Clan territory now. Whether they would let him into the warrior's den was another matter. At least he had managed to catch a squirrel on his way back, so he wasn't returning empty-pawed. As he emerged from the gorse tunnel, Fireheart saw Bluestar standing on top of the high rock. He realized he had just missed her call the clan together, because other cats were appearing from their dens to gather below her. Fireheart left his squirrel on the pile of fresh kill and padded over to join them. Across the clearing, Brindleface's kits tumbled out of the nursery, followed by Brindleface herself. Fireheart could easily pick out his sister's son, Cloudkit, by his gleaming white fur. Princess, Fireheart's sister, who still lived in Two Lake Place, had no wish to leave the comfortable life of a kitty pet, but Fireheart's tales of clan life had captivated her, and she had given her eldest son to the clan. So far, the clan cats were finding it hard to accept another kitty pet among them, even though Brindleface treated him like one of her own kits. Fireheart knew from experience how much determination Cloudkit would need to make a place for himself. As he drew closer, Fireheart heard the white kit complaining loudly to Brindleface. "Why can't I be an apprentice? I'm nearly as big as that dumb ginger kit of Frost Furs." Fireheart's interest quickened. Bluestar must be about to perform the apprentice naming ceremony for Frost Fur's two remaining kits. Their brother and sister, Brackenpaw and Cinderpaw, had been named apprentices a few moons ago, and Fireheart could guess that these two must be desperate for their own naming. He was glad that he had returned in time to witness it. "Shh," Brindleface whispered to Cloudkit as she gathered her kits around her and found them a place to sit. "You can't be an apprentice until you're 6 moons old." "But I want to be an apprentice now." Fireheart left Brindleface trying to explain clan customs to the assistant Cloudkit and went to sit near the front of the gathering next to Sandstorm. Her head whipped around in alarm as he took his place. "Fireheart, where have you been? You smell like a fox that's been dead for a moon." "Sorry," Fireheart mumbled. It was an accident. He hated the stench as much as any cat, and he didn't like having to lie to Sandstorm about how he came to smell like that. "Well, stay away from me till it wears off." Though Sandstorm's words were firm, there was laughter in her eyes as she shifted a tail length away from him. "And clean yourself up before you come into the den," growled a familiar voice. Fireheart turned to see Tigerclaw standing behind him. "I'm not going to sleep with that stink in my nose." Fireheart dipped his head in embarrassment as Tigerclaw stalked away, then looked up at Bluestar as she began to speak. "We are gathered here to give 2 clan kits their apprentice names." She glanced down to where Frostfur was sitting proudly, with her tail curled neatly over her paws. The 2 kits sat one on each side of her, and as Bluestar spoke, the bigger of them, a ginger kit, like his brother Brackenpaw, sprang impatiently to his paws. "Yes, come forward, both of you," Bluestar invited warmly. The ginger kit dashed forward and skidded to a stop at the foot of the high rock. His sister followed more sedately. She was a white kit like her mother, except for ginger patches along her back and a ginger tail. Fireheart closed his eyes for a moment. Not long ago, he had been given Cinderpaw as an apprentice. He half wished that he could be a mentor to one of these kits, but he knew that if Bluestar had chosen him for this honor, she would already told him to expect it. Perhaps she would never choose him again, he thought with a pang that chilled his heart after he had failed Cinderpaw so badly. "Mousefur," meowed Bluestar, "you have told me that you are ready to take on an apprentice. You will be mentor to Thornpaw. Fireheart watched as Mousefur, a wiry, compact she-cat with brown fur, stepped forward and went to stand beside the ginger kit, who scampered up to meet her. Mousefur, Bluestar went on, you have shown yourself a brave and intelligent warrior. See that you pass on your courage and wisdom to your new apprentice. While Bluestar spoke, Mousefur looked just as proud as the newly named Thornpaw. The two of them touched noses and withdrew to the edge of the clearing. Fireheart could hear Thornpaw meowing eagerly, as if he had already plying his mentor with questions. The ginger and white kit was still standing beneath the high rock, looking up at Bluestar. Fireheart was close enough to see her whiskers quivering with anticipation. Whitestorm, Bluestar announced, you are free to take a new apprentice now that Sandstorm has become a warrior. You will be mentor to Brightpaw. The big white cat, who had been stretched out at the front of the gathering, stood up and padded over to Brightpaw. She waited for him with her eyes shining. Whitestorm, meowed Bluestar, you are a warrior of great skill and experience. I know that you will pass on all you know to this young apprentice. Certainly, Whitestorm purred. Welcome, Brightpaw. He bent to touch noses with her and escorted her back to the assembled cats. The other cats began to gather around, congratulating the two new apprentices and calling them by their new names. As he went to join them, Fireheart caught sight of Graystripe at the back of the crowd, beside the tunnel. His friend must have returned to camp unseen while the rest of the clan were listening to Bluestar. It's all arranged, Graystripe mewed softly, padding over to Fireheart. If it's sunny tomorrow, Silverstream and Mistyfoot will persuade Graypool to leave the camp for some exercise. They'll meet us at Sunhigh. Where? Fireheart asked. Not sure that he wanted to go far into RiverClan territory 2 days running. It was dangerous to leave so much fresh ThunderClan scent there. There's a quiet glade just over the border, not far from the two-leg bridge, Graystripe explained. Silverstream and I used to meet there before, Fireheart understood. Graystripe had been keeping his promise about meeting Silverstream only at Four Trees, and it was only because of his desire to find out about the Sunning Rocks battle that they were taking an extra risk. Thank you, he murmured sincerely. As he padded over to the pile of fresh kill to choose a piece for himself, his paws twitched in anticipation of the next Sunhigh, when he would discover what Graypool knew of this mystery. This is the place, Graystripe whispered. He and Fireheart were only a few rabbit hops over the RiverClan border, on their own side of the river. The ground gave way to a deep hollow sheltered by thorn bushes. Snow had drifted there, and a tiny stream, frozen now into icicles, carved a deep channel between two rocks. Fireheart guessed that when New Leaf came and the snow melted, this would be a beautiful and well-hidden place. The two cats squeezed under one of the thorn bushes and scrabbled among the dead leaves to make comfortable nests while they waited. Fireheart had caught a mouse on the way and brought it as a gift for Graypool. He dropped it where the leaves were driest, trying to forget his own hunger, and settled down with his paws tucked under him. He knew he was putting himself and his friends in danger with this meeting, not to mention the fact that he was breaking the warrior code and lying to his clan. Yet he believed that this was all for the sake of his clan. Fireheart only wished he could be sure that the path he had chosen was the right one. The weak, leaf-bare sunlight glittered on the snow in the hollow. Sunhigh had come and gone, and Fireheart was beginning to think the other cats weren't coming when he caught a RiverClan scent and heard a thin, elderly voice raised in complaint from the direction of the river. This is too far for my old bones. I'm going to freeze to death. Nonsense, Graypool. It's a beautiful day. That was Silverstream. The exercise will do you good. Fireheart heard a snort of contempt in response. 3 cats came into view, picking their way down the side of the hollow. 2 of them were Silverstream and Mistyfoot. The third was an elder he had never seen before, a skinny she-cat with patchy fur and a scarred muzzle turning white with age. Halfway down the hollow she paused, stiffening as she sniffed the air. There are ThunderClan cats here, she hissed. Fireheart saw Silverstream and Mistyfoot exchange a worried glance. Yes, I know, Mistyfoot soothed the elderly she-cat. It's all right. Graypool gave her a suspicious look. What do you mean, all right? What are they doing here? They just want to talk to you, Mistyfoot said gently. Trust me. For a heartbeat, Fireheart was afraid the elder would turn back, yowling to raise the alarm, but to his relief, Greypool's curiosity was too much for her. She padded after Mistyfoot, shaking her paws with disgust as they sank into the soft snow. Graystripe? Silverstream mewed warily. Graystripe stuck his head out of the bush. We're here. The 3 RiverClan cats pushed their way into the prickly shelter. Greypool tensed as she came face to face with Fireheart and Graystripe, and her yellow eyes flashed with hostility. This is Fireheart, and this is Graystripe, meowed Silverstream. 2 of them. Greypool interrupted. There better be a good explanation for this. There is, Mistyfoot assured her. They're decent cats, for ThunderClan anyway. Give them a chance to explain. Both she and Silverstream looked expectantly at Fireheart. We need to talk to you, Fireheart began, feeling his whiskers twitch nervously. He pushed the piece of fresh kill toward her with one paw. Here, I brought you this. Greypool eyed the mouse. Well, at least you remember your manners, ThunderClan or not. She crouched down and began to crunch the fresh kill, showing teeth broken with age. Stringy, but it'll do, she rasped, gulping. While she was still eating, Fireheart tried to find the right words for what he needed to say. I want to ask you about something Oakhart said before he died, he ventured. Greypool's ears twitched. I heard what happened in the battle at Sunning Rocks, Fireheart continued. Before he died, Oakhart told one of our warriors that no ThunderClan cat should ever harm Stonefur. Do you know what he meant by this? Greypool did not reply until she had swallowed the last morsel of mouse and swiped a remarkably pink tongue around her muzzle. Then she sat up and curled her tail around her paws. She fixed a thoughtful gaze on Fireheart for several long moments, until he felt that she could see everything that was in his mind. I think you should go, she mewed at last to the 2 young RiverClan cats. Go on, out, you too, she added to Graystripe. I'll talk to Fireheart alone. I can see he's the one who needs to know. Fireheart bit back a protest. If he insisted that Graystripe should stay, the RiverClan elder might refuse to talk at all. He looked at his friend and saw his own puzzled expression reflected in Graystripe's yellow eyes. What did Greypool have to say that she didn't want her own clan to hear? Fireheart shivered, and not from the cold. Some instinct told him there was a secret here, dark as the shadow of a crow's wing. But if it was a RiverClan secret, he couldn't imagine what it could have to do with ThunderClan. From the glances they exchanged, Silverstream and Mistyfoot were just as confused, but they started to back out from the bush without protest. We'll wait for you near the 2-leg bridge, Silverstream mewed. There's no need, Greypool hissed impatiently. I may be old, but I'm not helpless. I'll find my own way back. Silverstream shrugged, and the 2 RiverClan cats withdrew, with Graystripe following them. Greypool sat in silence until the sense of the cats who had left began to fade. Now, she began, Mistyfoot has told you that I'm her mother and Stonefur's. Yeah. Fireheart's initial nervousness was ebbing away, to be replaced with respect for this ancient enemy queen, as he sensed the wisdom beneath her apparent short temper. Well, growled the old cat, I'm not. As Fireheart opened his mouth to speak, she went on. I brought the pair of them up as kits, but I didn't give birth to them. Oakhart brought them to me in the middle of Leaf Bear, when they were just a few days old. But where did Oakhart get the kits? Fireheart blurted out. Greypool's eyes narrowed. He told me he found them in the forest, as if they'd been abandoned by rogue cats or 2-legs, she meowed. But I'm not stupid, and my nose has always worked just fine. The kits smelled of the forest, all right. But there was another scent underneath, the scent of ThunderClan. And that's where we'll stop for the night. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and I hope you have a good evening and a good night. Till next time, my friends, take care.